It's funny because the bow hunting thing is cool. And when I found that, I realized as long as I get back to the ocean from time to time, I'm fine. But being in the mountains is super similar. Being able to walk in beautiful country, in the backcountry, amongst incredible animals and amazing terrain, and watching the sunset when you have all of your camping gear on your back. And then as it gets dark, you set up your tent and you make your little fire and you have your little camp stove and you're by yourself in the wilderness. I mean, that is living. That's when you really feel you're learning about yourself. And I never thought I'd have moments like that outside of surfing, because all of my moments in my life where I was really feeling like I got to know myself were in the ocean up until I found bow hunting. So I'm extremely grateful that I've had that in my life.
You're listening to the Born Primitive Podcast. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Primitive Podcast. Good morning, Tony. How we doing, man?
Morning, Bear. Doing good.
Things going good?
Yeah. Chaos. The circus is still going on at home, but it's the right type of chaos.
And you're getting back into the gym, I see.
Yeah,
Saw you in there this morning.
Yep,
that's
slowly
good.
but surely.
Well, good, man. Good, man. Well, hey, guys, today we have an absolute legend joining us. He doesn't need an intro, but I'm going to give him one anyway. We have Shane Dorian here today, a Hawaiian surf legend renowned for conquering some of the world's most colossal waves. Followed a celebrated career in the World Surf League. Shane transitioned into big wave surfing, earning his place as one of the sport's most influential figures. Beyond dominating the ocean, Shane's innovative spirit led him to develop the inflatable wetsuit system, a groundbreaking invention that has enhanced the safety for big wave surfers worldwide. When he's not riding waves, Shane channels adventurous energy into snowboarding and bow hunting in the highlands, embracing his love for the outdoors in every form. Make sure you check out Shane on Instagram and other channels. But Shane, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks so much. Morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
And for those that are not watching, Shane has a pretty gnarly, what'd you say? You hit the reef with your face?
Yeah, I did. And the reef won.
The reef usually wins, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was surfing a break. I'm on the north shore of Oahu in Hawaii right now, and
okay,
there's a really famous surf break called Pipeline, and it's just a couple 100 yards kind of to my left out in the ocean right here. And I was surfing there a couple days ago, and I just kind of was slightly, my position wasn't perfect, and I was in the tube where the wave kind of breaks over you and you're kind of inside the barrel, and there was a bit of a trap door, and I basically fell through the bottom of the barrel. I don't know how much you guys know about surfing, but basically ate crap on the reef. And yeah, it could have been a lot worse. It's just a bunch of scratch, but yeah, I look a little bit weird.
And I know the waves get pretty gnarly on the North Shore, particularly I think in the winter. This is the time where they're monsters, right? How big are they right now?
Yeah, it's peak season. The waves today, people in California would call feet. So it's probably 30 feet on the face. But it's no good. It's a little bit stormy today. So in the next coming days, in the probably the next 3 or 4 days, the surf should get really good again. But it's been a great winter here in Hawaii. We've had amazing weather. Today's a bit stormy and wild, but just overall in the last couple of months, I've been here on the North Shore of Oahu. This is kind of like Mecca of surfing. It's where all the really big events happen in the winter time, and all of the pro surfers and the up and coming pro surfers. They're all here at this time of year. So it's kind of 'tis the season kind of vibe. We have a really big event called the Pipe Pro coming up at Pipeline that kind of kicks off the season for the World Championship Tour. And I'm coaching 3 athletes in that event. So we're just doing a bunch of practice stuff and training stuff kind of leading up to the event, which kicks off in about a week.
Nice, man. And go ahead, Tone. Yeah.
I was just going to ask about the coaching, Shane. Was that something that you had kind of intentionally started to dip your toes in, or did it kind of organically happen where just as you kind of, you've been a face and a name within the surfing community for forever now. So did that organically happen, or were you intentional about that was a desire of yours?
Yeah, it was not a desire of mine at all. I never really thought of myself as a coach, and I never really thought even I would be any good as a coach, to be completely frank with you. There's a Brazilian surfer about 5 years ago named Italo Ferreira. He was going for the world title, and there was one event left here at Pipeline, keep the same break I keep talking about. And he got a hold of me and asked me to coach him for the final event of the year when he was trying to win the world title, and won the world title. So we had a a really successful kind of first foray into coaching. And then I started, just other pro surfers, real high level pro surfers started reaching out to me about coaching them for specific events. And I really enjoyed it. And I kind of sort of discovered that I was good at it. It's nothing like sort of 4 decades of narrow focused experience that, that's kind of what I have in this specific niche of pro surfing and competitive surfing. So it's kind of cool to have just a lot of experience in one thing actually pay off after you're done competing yourself.
And do you find a system has kind of evolved from now you coaching more and more? Has a structured system evolved, or is it very much athlete to athlete, a different approach that you have to take? Because I can imagine, I mean, we were former athletes, of course, not in surfing, but like for surfing specifically, there's got to be a huge amount of psychological kind of prep that goes into doing what you guys do. And of course the physical components there, but you're with dudes that are at the highest level already. So yeah, has it become a formalized kind of approach that you realize works, or is it very unique just depending on the individual's temperament?
That's a good question. I would say I have a style and my style may or may not resonate with certain athletes. I've worked with, like the junior team from Hawaii I traveled with them for 3 years. It's a team of 6 girls and 6 boys, 18 and under, and coached the whole team. And that was super interesting. And I learned a ton, not only coaching younger athletes, but girls as well as boys. And that was super fun and interesting, but it really depends. I really try to tailor my approach athlete to athlete. But it's fascinating to me from like a psychological standpoint and a mindset standpoint, and trying to bring value to these athletes, and really try to, they all have such big goals, and when you can help someone to achieve their goal, it's incredible. I spent about 80 days in 2024 coaching the U.S. surf team for the Olympics. And so I was the head coach of Team USA for the surfing component for Paris 2024. And we ended up winning a gold medal, which was awesome, and had an incredible team of US surfers. And that was a great experience as well. And then it was one of those things that I think I probably would not do again, but it was a really big box I got to kind of like, tick for myself.
And I'm curious, because I would imagine a lot of people just envision like this pro surfers, like it's just a bunch of surfer bros that like go out with their long hair and, which of course I doubt is the case. I would imagine it's been professionalized in a way where there's like a real strength training regimen when you're not on the water. Is that accurate? And how has that evolved? I would imagine it's a lot of balancing exercises. Probably not a lot of like meathead stuff that maybe we were doing when we were playing football and baseball and stuff. But what does that look like? Or is that kind of like all over the place? Is there an accepted regimen that like all the best guys kind of subscribe to? Or are there some guys that can literally just get out on the water and they don't have to have a formal kind of strength training regimen off the water?
It's definitely gone in that direction much more. So I would say, like strength and conditioning training has kind of come into it for almost every single athlete. I would say mostly like at a younger age, try to like develop that strength so they can surf at a more mature, more polished, like level, so they can sort of match power and performance and precision, and kind of like make their surfing look bigger as when they're younger, to try and surf against these big guys. Probably really similar. There's probably similarities between like the NBA, when like kids are coming out of high school, tall and strong, but really skinny and maybe not strong enough, and definitely not imposing. So it's one of those things where like they really are leveling up nowadays, and it's very far from a bunch of stoner hippie surfers. It's there's a lot on the line for these guys with world titles and girls. And they take it very seriously. That, like the Red Bulls of the world are in the surfing space now, and they demand really high level of professionalism, and it's been cool. I mean, the surfing industry as a whole has grown over the years, and it's been really fun to be a part of, for sure. And the coaching component is something super fun. I don't really want to pursue it and make it become my life in the future, but it's been really fun.
And kind of rewinding back to the psychological kind of component of both coaching and then I'm sure your 4 decades as a pro surfer. Are there key moments throughout your 4 decades where you realize like, oh, I've kind of leveled up my psychological approach to surfing? Because I mean, anything, whether it's a different sport or even business, like your level of comfortability, like in certain situations, just with experience, and that's anything in life, continues to deepen and deepen. Were there any key moments throughout your career where you're like, well, my approach has changed and the kind of even things like fear, I'm able to dial down a ton. Is that something, are there any moments throughout your career you recognize that you kind of leveled up your psychological approach?
For sure. I would say there's definitely a few specific moments, but I spent 11 years of my life from like kind of 20 years old to 31, 32 years old, kind of going for a world title on the world tour. So like doing a different event every 2 weeks around the world, trying to win a world title. And that was like extremely intense and just super highly competitive and stressful, really fun, but very, and then when I got burnt out on that, I always loved surfing big waves, but I was so busy trying to compete that it would take up all of my time. And so I wasn't able to kind of allocate any time to surfing really big waves. And so when I became kind of fatigued with surfing competitions and kind of lost interest in that, I really felt like I wasn't really hitting my potential as a surfer, as a human competing. And I was like, hey, I need to do something that's making me happy and really challenging myself, where I feel like I can like really meet my potential. And big waves was really where I went with that. So I quit surfing in contests and really shifted my complete focus 100% into chasing the biggest waves in the world and really trying to become the best big wave surfer in the world at that time. And that was really fun and super, super challenging. It had really not really been done before by someone who's a high level competition surfer. That space was more like, in history, it's been more like people that have kind of focused on that their whole career. Like, I'm a big wave surfer. And so to kind of transition from a high level competitive surfer trying to win a world title to trying to become the best big wave surfer, that was interesting and challenging, like I said. And then, yeah, so a lot of those lessons as far as like, really, who am I and how much resolve do I have and how do I overcome fears? Like there was, how do I maintain, a level head in a really intense situation? Because, surfing really, really huge waves, like 60 to 70 foot face waves that are trying to kill you. Like there was a lot of life and death situations where, friends of mine passed away, and I had to there was just really, really intense situations surfing really giant waves where I learned a ton about who I was, for sure.
And did you have any? I mean, you had to have had some close calls. Are there any that stand out as far as like, this was the most intense as far as accidents or just almost near death experiences?
Yeah, I had two. I had one when I was 19, and then I had one where right after I had both of my kids. I have two kids, a girl and a boy, and at that time I was like really, really pushing hard with big wave surfing. And I was surfing a break called Mavericks in Half Moon Bay in Northern California. And it was probably the peak of my confidence and like my, just like feeling like physically, mentally, like ready for anything and wanting to surf the biggest waves I could find. And I was surfing on this giant day and this wave came to me and I just was like overconfident essentially, and just not reckless, but I just like chose to go on this wave that just did not want anyone to ride it. And I ate shit, long story short, and went over the handlebars, so to speak. And I was underwater for over a minute. And that was with like a really, really high heart rate and getting kind of the air knocked out of me on impact. And really, really, really had a close call where, when I got to the surface and I got rescued, like my pupils were dilated and my lips were blue, and I had a concussion for 48 hours. And that was a really scary situation where I kind of contemplated, like, how do I justify continuing to do this, having a family at home, and all that was kind of running through my head. And that's when I came up at the start of the show. You guys talked about me developing a safety device for surfing. So I came up with essentially like a CO2 cartridge attached to a bladder that would be embedded in my wetsuit that I would wear. So very similar to like the Avi packs now for like backcountry skiing and snowboarding. This thing, I would basically have pulls on the front of my wetsuit. I would pull them and it would inflate this bladder within my wetsuit and get me to the surface. And that was something that kind of like crystallized after that. That idea kind of crystallized literally on the runway in the airplane flying home from Mavericks from that really bad wipeout. It was when the flight attendants were doing the safety briefing about, in case of emergency, just put this yellow thing around your neck and then you pull the tabs and it'll inflate. And I had this like kind of aha moment where I was like, well, I wonder if I can incorporate something like that into a wetsuit design and use it to basically justify myself being able to go surf giant waves, even though I have a young family.
Damn, well, I guess I definitely want to get to that. But as far as the psychology of that event and what happened, like, as I'm kind of using an analogy, like in the skydiving world, then I'm not some diehard skydiver. I have like 130 jumps. So in that world, that's nothing. But, when you have a cutaway, you got to cut away your chute and go to your reserve. A lot of people say, all right, you got to get right back on the plane and do another jump. So like kind of get that out of your system. And I had to cut away. And unfortunately, it was only a 1 jump day. So I had to kind of live with that for a couple of weeks before I could get back and do another jump. But yeah, when I'm pulling my reserve handle and thinking, I hope this works, there was definitely a moment of like, all right, is this how, you start questioning, is this worth the risk? Especially because this was not a military jump. This was me just horsing around on the weekend. But so like when that happened to you in the big wave surfing community, is it a similar vibe where you're like, hey, rejock? And obviously if you're physically concussed, that limits that. But like, what's the mindset when you get your ass handed to you like that and you have that near death experience? And also I'm curious, like when you're under the water, are you just getting pummeled with the next wave? So you're trying to get to the surface and every time you get close, you just get buried back down to the bottom. Like what is actually happening below the surface? Because I can imagine the panic that would induce, particularly with a high heart rate. You just hit your head, you think you're about to get to the surface and you just get freaking pummeled again. To maintain your composure. And I'd even be curious, in your world, do you guys work on breath holds and stuff like that? So if that happens, guys have a better shot. I know that I just threw a lot at you, but unpack that a little bit.
There's quite a lot to unpack there. First of all, yeah, we do some serious like breath training. I've done a bunch of that in my life. So I'm, just to put in perspective, I'm kind of at the end of all the stuff I'm talking about. That's a little bit in the rearview mirror for me now, luckily. And that was an amazing, like kind of large chapter of my life that I really kind of left it all on the table, and really happy that I poured so much of my energy, into that during that chapter. But so yeah, so like when you're so on that wipeout at Mavericks, I went over the falls, meaning like I went over with the wave and kind of knocked the wind out of my I kind of got the wind knocked out of me on impact. And then it pushed me underwater down to the bottom where the reef was. And then it pushed, basically the pressure of that wave is like pushing you underwater as hard as it possibly can. And then over time, it tends to dissipate, like the power of it pushing you down. And at that time, that's when you really want to like use your energy to try to get back to the surface. So even though I was running out of air, I was swimming up to the surface, and I was about 10 feet from the surface when the next wave broke over me and did the same thing without me getting a breath of air, just pushed me straight back down to the bottom. And at that moment, that's when I thought for sure that's game over. Not to get cosmic or religious on you guys, but it definitely felt like a miracle that long story short, got back to the surface. And I attribute that to luck, most of all, for sure. And then also a lot of training. I did a ton of training, and I did this breath holding course, a couple of them, where like they kind of teach you the science behind how to hold your breath for as long as possible with a high heart rate. And that was super interesting and something I felt like was really fun, although really, really uncomfortable. But yeah, I mean, I could hold my breath, static hold, for 5 minutes and 35 seconds. And so you're with a high heart rate, you should be able to hold your breath for 25% of that, which for me was about 1 minute and 45 seconds. So having that knowledge of knowing you can hold your breath for 1 minute and 45 seconds with a fairly high heart rate, as long as you can keep your cool, is really good information.
Did it change your, I mean, having a family, and I'm asking for personal reasons. I have 3 now, under 2.5. Bear has a 3-year-old.
Wow.
When you had it, yeah, when you had, because I think you have 1 boy and 1 girl.
Yeah.
Did that change? I mean, you said right there, it kind of led to almost an invention of the inflatable wetsuit device, but did that change even outside of that one moment, just in general, moving forward as you had kids and as they're growing up? Did it change your risk threshold? Like, were you making decisions differently, or did you still kind of not throw caution to the wind, but were still aggressive with how you were approaching the big wave surfing?
I definitely became a much better at managing risk, and it became more like risk management definitely came more to the forefront. When I was younger and before I had kids, I was some would really say I was pretty reckless in like big wave situations. I would kind of like really like rely on my confidence and my experience and just go kind of no matter what. And then as I had kids, I really tried to manage that risk as well as I possibly could. And in the ways that I did that was like, for me, like the risk really had to like the reward had to outweigh the risk by like quite a big margin. So like I would only put myself in heavy situations, meaning going to chase giant waves around the world, when it was, the forecast and the weather and the wind and the swell lined up to be like a classic epic swell condition. And that's the only time I would ever really like the only time I would ever risk my life was when the reward was like, waves that I would like remember for the rest of my life. That's sort of the policy I had personally. And even that, like a lot of people would say that that's reckless because I'm still risking my life. But my wife kind of knew what she signed up for. And even though my kids didn't sign up for it, they're kind of involuntarily there. And their dad just happens to surf really big waves. But yeah, I mean, and then as I got older, I always really like, and then, the thing that really changed for me was as soon as I developed that inflatable wetsuit, it changed the game. It really did. Like, I hate saying that because it did change the game. I kind of for everybody who likes surfing big waves, but for me personally, it really changed the game as far as like the risk went way down. Like my chances of dying in big waves went way down. Like we haven't had, like that was in 2010 when I developed that wetsuit. And so, we're here 15 years later, not a single surfer surfing big waves has died using that type of wetsuit since then, which is crazy because in like the 10 years before that wetsuit was developed, people weren't surfing nearly the size of waves they're surfing now, not even close. They're able to take way more risk as far as like wave heights and intensity of beatdowns, and are much safer. Like your chances of dying wearing that wetsuit are really low. I mean, it's been proven, it's a fact. So that's something I felt really comfortable, really good about as far as like it being able to like kind of justify my pursuit of surfing big waves. And then I always told myself at 45, that was my cutoff. Like I can kind of send it until I'm 45 and then I'm done. I'm not going to like kind of like just mellow out as I get older. I'm just going to be at 45 years old. I'm going to stop surfing Jaws, which is on Maui, like the best big wave in the world. I'm going to stop surfing Mavericks in Northern California. I'm going to stop surfing Nazare, which is in Portugal, and quit chasing 70-foot swells around the world, So it was kind of cold turkey, but that was always the plan.
Well, I'm curious on that. Like, I mean, that's an incredible like development and invention for you. Obviously, hopefully there was some financial benefit, but just did you like partner up with another company and like, did they kind of work the business side a little bit and you were kind of the face of it? Or, we don't need to go too deep on this, but I'm just intrigued on the entrepreneurial side of this, like how that came about and like how you got it across the finish line. And I imagine there's been maybe some iterations off of it from V1 versus, whatever it is now. But I mean, that's incredible, man.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was interesting. I was really lucky I've been surfing for a company called Billabong. It's like a core surfing brand. They make clothing and wetsuits, and so when I had that idea, I started sketching out prototypes of what I was kind of thinking of. And then when I got off that plane, I immediately called like the wetsuit designer that I had been working with at Billabong and say, hey, what do you think of this idea? And I was fully expecting him to like say no, or I'm not interested, or Billabong would never do that. And he was the opposite. He was like, I think this is really cool. We could be super innovative, and I'm going to try to get Billabong on board to help develop this with you. And so that's what we did. I mean, they had, like, luckily they had patent lawyers at the time that helped me with the patent process and protecting us from a liability standpoint. And so we owned that 50-50. And then, yeah, we were able to develop the suit, but it's a very niche market. Like it hasn't been something that had a bunch of like a financial upside for me. It was more about making sure big wave surfers came home at night. That's really what it's all about. And so we've even though the concept is patented, we've always been super cool with other companies making this type of suit. It's always been about saving lives.
Shane, something Bear and I talk often about or laugh about too is when we don't get to move enough or work out enough, how kind of our demons come out. Is that surfing for you? Like if you don't get to surf for an extended period of time, do you start to get weird?
I do, and I don't even notice I'm doing it, but my wife will be like, "Hey, you need to go surfing," and
it's always the female counterpart that senses it.
And these days, so surfing is definitely like still a passion of mine, and I love to be just in the ocean. It's almost not even the act of surfing; it's just like being in the ocean, like watching the sunrise early in the morning, or watching the sunset, or being with your friends out in the ocean, just being out there, like just in nature. I have always loved that. It's always like kind of like set me straight and like kept my stress low. And it's just it's a great thing in my life, always has been. And then about 22 or 3 years ago, I found bow hunting and I became obsessed. Like I fell head over heels in love with bow hunting and being in the backcountry, walking the mountains for the whole day or multiple days with my bow and all my gear on my back and all that. So that's been a constant in my life, something that really something I've been super passionate about for the last couple of decades. And that's definitely something like when I feel really stressed out or I need to plan something to get away, that's probably the thing I do the most.
We have a hunting line called Born Primitive Outdoor. So we might have to get you kitted out if you need something.
Well, I think, do you know Sloan? Does Sloan work with you with Turtle Box? So yeah, so he was a friend of ours, and he worked with us initially, helping manage our ambassador, like outdoor, or kind of the outdoor ambassador program. So yeah. I remember when we were out in Park City, he was talking about how he was working with you with Turtle Box.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Do you know Aaron Snyder?
I do. Yep, I do.
Oh, awesome. I'll say maybe we can get you guys on a hunt. Aaron's always like, he's plugged into all that shit, right? And he's the freaking man. So if you ever want to come across the ocean and hit a elk hunt, I'm sure, or anything, I mean, Aaron can plug you in. That might be kind of fun.
I would, for sure. Aaron seems like a really cool dude. I developed a hunting version of an electric bike, and I sent one to Aaron just because I love his stuff, and I thought he could really use it for some of his backcountry hunting.
What did it ever come to fruition? Is that something you ever brought to market, or did it kind of?
Yeah, it's really cool. The company I worked with is called UBCO. It's UBCO, and they make like seriously badass off-road bikes. And the one that I developed is kind of like a hunting version of their gnarliest bike, but has like 1,000-watt motor on the back wheel, 1,000-watt motor on the front wheel, and then it can carry like 350 pounds on these cargo decks. So the front cargo deck and the back cargo deck, they're fully kitted out with like these badass straps. So I can go bow hunting like here in Hawaii for deer. I can throw like a soft Yeti cooler with 50 pounds of ice on the back, and all of my hunting gear, all of my camping gear, and my bow, my pack, like 3 days worth of gear. It's basically like a little quad, and I can drive up the mountain, like ride with like two electric batteries for my bike and just go off for like 3 or 4 days and just come back with like 3 deer. And that's kind of what I developed it for. And it's a really, really fun tool to just get me, in places that there's no way I could get to for multiple days. And Aaron just seemed like a really cool dude. I always thought his content was really cool, so I wanted to send him a bike. I never met Aaron ever. I just randomly reached out to him.
Do you stay on a pretty routine as far? I know you have axis deer in Hawaii, along with a lot of. It's not just axis deer, but do you stay on a pretty routine schedule of like coming to the States for an elk hunt, or is it just kind of random depending on the year?
Yeah, it's a little bit random, but I've been really, really lucky to hunt elk quite a bit in my life. I've probably done 10 or 12 elk, maybe more than that, maybe 15 elk hunts. But I've probably killed, let's see, I think I've killed 8 bulls and 2 cows, so like 10 elk so far. And they're definitely one of my favorite animals to hunt with a bow. Like not only are they just incredible eating, they're you get a lot of meat when you get one, which is incredible. Like your year is almost over. Sorry. Your year is almost over for the year when you get an elk on the ground. And then also they're just great bow hunting animals, like really, really great. They're, it's cool because elk season is during their rut, so their mating season. So you can call the bulls in with like a cow call, like a sweet cow call, basically like the cows make these like kind of sweet sounds when they're kind of feeling it, and the bulls will come running in, and then the bulls will kind of fight each other in front of you a lot of times. And so being in the elk woods during elk season and the rut, with a bow in your hand and trying to keep it together under that kind of pressure, where there is a 800-pound bull elk fighting another one right in front of you at 12 yards, you're at full draw and you're trying to like keep your heart rate low enough to make an ethical shot. And you have one chance. It's not like you have a follow-up shot most of the time. You just have to make that one arrow count. There's nothing like that for sure.
I would imagine your background, your previous profession set you up well for those moments because, yeah, I mean, obviously it's not as simple as when you're at an archery range, just shooting, hanging out with the boys. And that's badass, man. Well, maybe we'll have to get you linked up with Aaron at some point because, he's the man. And I mean, he's going up to BC. He does the mountain goat hunts up there. The terrain up there just looks absolutely insane. You're 300 miles from any civilization. No comms, like you're just out in the middle of nowhere. Get going there on a little twin prop. But yeah, we'll link you up, man, after this and let you guys, if you guys want to plan that. But he works with us now, and that's been a big part of our growth as a company is venturing into the hunting space. So
very cool. I'm all about the adventure of back hunting.
And this question stems from kind of, I think personally having like an idealistic version of what Hawaii is in my head. But do you find similar, like if you spend too much time away from surfing, you start to get weird? If you spend too much time away from Hawaii, is it the same thing? Because correct me if I'm wrong, you were born there. Like it's not as if you moved there as a pro surfer. Like that's where you grew up. So is it, when you think of like the mainland versus Hawaii, is it like two distinct, different, both culturally and then of course like things like the climate, that's obvious. But do you get drawn back there if you spend too much time away?
For sure. I mean, I would say that like, being born and raised in Hawaii, that's all I knew was my whole all throughout high school. Basically, I just was like, I was born in Kona in Hawaii, and I kind of found as soon as I learned to walk, I learned to swim, and as soon as I learned to swim, I learned to ride waves, and so I just grew up in the ocean as a child, and so for me, it's like the ocean is like a magnet, like personally to me. And so if I'm out of the ocean for too long, I feel like something's wrong. Kind of like my gills are drying up. I know that sounds silly, but that really, really is who I am. I feel like being an ocean person is in my DNA at this point. That's how I feel. But it's funny because the bow hunting thing is cool. And when I found that, I realized as long as I get back to the ocean from time to time, I'm fine. But like being in the mountains is very, very super similar. Like being able to walk in beautiful country, in the backcountry, amongst incredible animals and amazing terrain, and watching the sunset when you have all of your camping gear on your back. And then as it gets dark, you set up your tent and you make your little fire and you have like your little camp stove. And you're like by yourself in the wilderness. I mean, that is living. That's when you really feel like you're learning about yourself. And I never thought I'd have moments like that outside of surfing, because all of my moments in my life where I was really feeling like I got to know myself were in the ocean up until I found bow hunting. So I'm extremely grateful that I've had that in my life as well, so it's pretty cool.
Do you find from a perspective standpoint that like, can you sense a difference? And I'm sure, I mean, you've spent so much time, it's not as if you're a 12-year-old who's only lived in Hawaii, but do you sense a difference? And I'll almost like take you to where I sense that, like, do we have a higher level of like neuroticism? Like when you spend so much time in Hawaii, you grow up there, it feels like there's a different pace there. When you come to the mainland, especially maybe when you were a teenager and stuff, is there a different mentality that you can feel when you're around people that kind of grew up completely different to the way you did in Hawaii?
Yes, no doubt. I mean, Hawaii is like, I'd say the biggest thing in Hawaii is the pace. The pace, when you're like, if my friends from the mainland come to visit me, they have like this adjustment period. And so like anyone listening to this, and, anyone who comes to Hawaii and stays for like 2 weeks, you just have to downshift. Like the pace of Hawaii is like, I don't know, it's just so chill. People aren't in a rush to go anywhere, like for the most part. And like, whether the cool thing is like your happiness in a lot of places on the mainland, especially in cities, is really tied to your economic situation. And that's true in Hawaii for sure, but I would say to a lesser extent. Like, even if you are a waiter at night at a restaurant and you don't have the biggest income, as long as you have the flexibility to have your days free and you're out surfing during the day and hanging out with your girl and experiencing the mountains and bow hunting, and like, life is good, even if you don't make hardly any money in Hawaii. Like, as long as you have the right mindset, I think it can be done, where it's really difficult to do that in a lot of cities on the mainland. Like, I think what I'm talking about, a lot of people listening to the podcast from smaller towns can probably relate to that type of mindset. But I really feel like in Hawaii, you really feel, I don't know, I'm really lucky. I feel really lucky to be born and raised in a place where people don't care where your kids go to school. People don't care what you drive. People don't care, the materials in your countertop or anything like that. It's like, oh, that's just silly shit. You know what I mean? All I care about is like options in life. When I wake up in the morning, like what are my options for this year? What are my options from my 50s? Now that I'm in my 50s, like, how do I want to live? Like, those like big questions is like what I want to focus on,
Yeah, it's just, I had a good friend, and I grew up in a very, very, not very, very, but remote part of the backwoods of Pennsylvania, so can 100% relate to that. And then I had a good friend who grew up in Dallas, Texas, and then kind of had a life epiphany after working in finance for a while and moved to Hawaii. And he confirmed, I mean, it's why I asked the question, he confirmed what you exactly said. He said it took him like a year to really like kind of rewire the way in which he approached his day, because he was so used to the hustle of, I mean, finance is kind of that's like a cliche example too, of just a mentality where it was so numbers driven, everything every day in his life. And then he moved there with his girlfriend and said it completely rewired the way he looks at his day.
For sure. Yeah, I can confirm.
Yeah, and you can even see it just in the continental U.S. Like, you go up to New York City,
oh, for sure,
it's versus, we're in Virginia Beach. Even that, the difference is massive. Or you go to the Midwest, or it's
yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's like you hit the nail on the head. It's like the material things isn't what drives actual happiness. And for those of you that can just go out on the ocean every day, even if it's for an hour, just to kind of knock the edge off a little bit, those are in a way the richest people out there, because that's real happiness, not your bank account and being in the hamster wheel the whole time. I had a quick one about, I know we're swerving here, but Nazare, you mentioned it. I saw the documentary, so that's why I kind of like know that. Is that the biggest big wave typically? Because they were talking about the 100-footer. In the documentary, I don't remember which one it was, but just looked completely absurd. Like the view of that wave, like from the cliffs where they all stand. I mean, it literally looks like a mountain moving through the water. So like, is that one like the big wave, or is Maverick and the other one you mentioned like just as big, and that one just got a lot of notoriety from the documentary? And like, how do you build up to something like that? And I know obviously they're using jet skis as an insertion method, which is something you all actually teach us. So I was in the Navy before this. I was in the SEAL teams, and that's actually something we're being taught through guys in your line of work that kind of invented it through surfing big waves, of like a toe in, right? And then you like, so, and to pull guys out. So I'm curious, like, what was that experience like? I know we were kind of already there, but just when you watch that documentary, it blows your fucking mind. Cause you're like, it's this little speck, this little guy on a mountain of water that's going freaking 100 miles an hour. And it's the power that it has when it hits the wall. I mean, it's just crazy, man.
Yeah. So I've been in Nazare a couple times. I actually never towed into a wave there. That was my goal, was to paddle it. So I wanted to do it under my own power, my own paddle power with my own two hands. And I didn't paddle into the kind of waves that you're seeing on the biggest waves that you're seeing on those documentaries. But I would say Nazare is the most consistently big wave in the world. Like it gets big the most times each winter out of anywhere, for sure. It's also the tallest most of the time. The way there's an underwater canyon off the coast of Nazare that funnels all the swell. So, a mile down the beach this way might be 20 foot. The surf might be 20 foot. A mile down the beach this way, the surf might be 20 foot. But at Nazare right there, it focuses into this giant apex, and the waves will be like 70, 80 foot on the face. It's just like the way that underwater canyon is really cool. But a lot of these really big waves, they kind of have that really similar kind of like like the reef bathymetry, basically, is what it's called. So how the earth is shaped into those waves as it comes from deep water onto the reef. But yes, Nazare is amazing from that point of view. Nazare is not these are like subtle nuances, and you kind of have to know a lot more about surfing, and I won't get too deep into this, but like tow surfing is very similar to rifle hunting, where like with rifle hunting, it's hunting, and so is bow hunting is hunting. They're both the same thing, but there's these subtle nuances, like if there is a 450-inch bull elk, meaning like a giant, the biggest bull elk out of a herd of 500 elk that is sitting, a quarter mile away, and you're on a cliff, like having a conversation like we are right now, and you can shoot straight, you have a good rifle, you can pick the biggest bull out of those 500 elk or 1,000 elk or 5,000 elk, right? As long as you can shoot straight. So you're still hunting. It's amazing. Like the rifle is amazing for getting the biggest animal, and it's the best for sure for getting the most meat, the fastest, the most efficient method. And it's really fun. You get your friends out there and you get all the hunting vibe and stuff. But there's these subtle differences between bow hunting and rifle hunting, where like, bow hunting really has its own thing. You know what I mean? Like there's really, really valid reasons that people fall in love with bow hunting. And that's much more similar to like rifle hunting is like tow surfing, where you're using a jet ski to tow you into these heavy waves. And, on a really, really big day at Nazare, here's a really good way to explain it. On the biggest day in history at Nazare, and the biggest wave in history in the last 100 years comes into Nazare, if there's 30 tow teams on jet skis, all 30 of those people want that wave. 30 out of 30. Or if there was 100 out of 100 are fighting to get that one wave, biggest wave in history, with the jet ski. If you're out on a normal, really big day at a place called Jaws on Maui or Mavericks in Northern California, and the heaviest wave of the day comes in just in the last like 6 months, not the last 100 years, but everybody's paddle surfing, maybe 2 out of 20 or 30 or 50 of the best guys on earth will turn around and go on that wave. So it's like it separates the men from the boys when you're paddling. And it's kind of similar in the hunting world as well. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that. And yeah, I mean, spot on. I mean, you're taking it.
They're both fun though. Like I'm not against toe surfing. Toe surfing is surfing, and it's really, really fun. And you can get a million waves, and you can get, it's way safer. You can get extracted out of the impact zone, and you can just, you can stack up a ton of waves and get a ton of exercise, and it's really, really fun. And you can do it with your friends, and same with rifle hunting. Rifle hunting is amazing, but like I choose to paddle surf because it's way more challenging. And when you get a really radical ride, it's just like this feeling of accomplishment that is like overwhelming, and much the same with bow hunting.
Yeah, and I would imagine because with the paddle, I mean, the timing is huge, right? I mean, you're trying to judge this thing when it's pretty far away, and you just have to send it when you feel it's like the perfect point. I mean, obviously,
yeah,
that's coming from a non-trained perspective, but is that generally the gist of it? I mean, and how do you even judge that? Because it's coming in. I mean, it's this big freaking moving thing. Like, I guess just hours and hours and hours and days on the water, you eventually kind of learn just that cadence.
It's really like, well, first of all, in giant waves, when you're paddling without a jet ski, you're a sitting duck. So like you can only paddle so fast, with your arms, you're just, oh shit, a huge wave's coming, I got to paddle. And you can't really get out of the way. You just got to take it on the head. If you're on a jet ski, you're the biggest wave in history comes, you're like, oh, no worries. It's like a dirt bike. You just drive it. A 1,000-foot wave, you just drive around it with a jet ski, no worries. So it's like it's critical. You're just a sitting duck. And then you have to position yourself to not only, like, you basically have to put yourself in the position to catch a super, super heavy wave, meaning you got to put yourself essentially really close to the impact zone. So you have to basically put yourself in the most dangerous position in order to catch a really big wave. Where with a jet ski, you can be sitting a half a mile out to sea from the danger zone. And then when the right wave comes, you're on the tow rope, and you're riding it on the tow rope, like, oh, this is cool. I can see the whole wave. Should I go? Should I not? Last second, I just can continue holding the rope and drive to the next one. And then if you eat shit, your driver comes in, grabs you, and just like takes you out of the spot. So that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but yeah, they're definitely two completely different things for sure. But like I said, they're both super fun.
Love it, man. Love it.
Shane, the last thing I'd love to hear just how your outcome or ended up being was I heard you on Rogan talking about getting a pretty extensive stem cell treatment for a knee injury. I think snowboarding, right? If I recall, you were snowboarding and kind of blew your knee out. How did that all work out? Because we talk a lot about kind of both treatment modalities for performance, but then also recovery on this podcast. So I'd love to hear how that whole process played out and how your knee's doing now.
Yeah. Whenever someone asks me about my stem cell treatments, I'm really like reluctant to like, I try to like underhype it, like stem cells are like, it's not like you break your bone and the doctor goes in there and puts like a bar with screws and then like 6 weeks later, and then it puts you in a cast, and 6 weeks later, you're going to be healed. Right. And most likely it's going to heal your bone and you're going to be fine. But, like with stem cells, it's like there's gray area, and like some injuries work better than others with stem cells, and some situations work better, and some people, accept the stem cells better and all this stuff. But anyway, that's just like a little bit of like a disclaimer. But for me personally, it's been like a game changer in my life. Like the first time I ever got stem cells, I ran into a tree on my snowboard. You're right. And I blew my left knee sky high, had complete tears in my MCL and ACL. And right after my surgery, and when I started recovering from that, Rogan said, hey, like, you have to fly to Austin so we can get stem cells put in there. I really feel super strongly about stem cells. You got to come out. They can't hurt. They can only help. And so I didn't really know anything about stem cells at the time. Flew out to Austin, met with Joe, got a couple stem cell treatments in my knee. A few weeks later, I started feeling like significantly better. Like almost like my knee at the time was like healing not weird, but like very slowly. And there was like all this, like, as I would straighten out my leg, it was like my gears were grinding, like it felt like something was wrong, even though there really wasn't anything wrong. It's just the healing process. But it was like the stem cells were like shooting like WD-40 into my gears. Like it was amazing. Like it was like it's like it filled my knee up with like, doesn't even sound right, but like it's like it filled it up with fluid and made it just feel really good. And then it accelerated my healing process for sure. And I feel like it healed stronger because of my stem cells. And then that made me really interested in learning more about stem cells. And then about 15, 16 months ago now, I went to a clinic in Tijuana called CPI, that I also found out about from Joe. And they essentially outside the US, because of FDA, they just have a lot less regulation and a lot less limitations on what they can do with stem cells. So you can get a really ultra high volume of stem cells injected in your body in a very, very short amount of time. And so I went to Mexico, CPI in Tijuana, and I got both knees done, both shoulders done, my elbow done, my right elbow. I had a really bad tennis elbow. And then I had my SI joint done and my lumbar and cervical spine done. So my back by far was the worst thing in my body. I had some serious wear and tear on my shoulders. But yeah, just like overall incredible results, especially my shoulders. My shoulders like would get sore from like surfing too much or lifting weights too much. I always had to like really be careful, like training. And I swear, no joke, I'm 52 and my shoulders feel like they're 18 years old. Like it feels like I took my shoulders and handed them in and got new ones. I wish I could say the same thing about my back. It's not the same, but it's like significantly better. My back is much more durable and resilient than it's been in 15 years. I was having to pass up elk hunting trips because of my back. I was having to pass up surf trips and snowboarding trips because of my back was so fragile and just susceptible to going out. And now it's not super resilient. It still gets stiff when I overuse it, and it's not perfect and it's not perfectly healed, but the stem cells have been super helpful, long story short. But I was also really followed the post-treatment protocol. I didn't drink for 6 months. I was eating very clean, trying to sleep as much as I could. And then I didn't do any ice bath, no sauna for like 3 months. I didn't surf for 3 months. I didn't train for 3 months, which is like, I really tried to like maximize my results by following the protocol to the T.
Were you stacking any peptides with that as well?
For my knee injury, I did. I took BPC 157 and another peptide stack. I forget exactly what it was.
Maybe TB 500, maybe.
I was working with Conover Wellness, and Dr. Conover, he's a legend, and he's helped develop a lot of these protocols with the peptides. And yeah, some really, really great friends of mine sent me like a care package as soon as I got hurt. And we're like, here, this is really, really going to help you heal a lot faster. So I was doing, I think it was mostly BPC 157 and like an additional kind of peptide stack along with that. And I was just doing it subcutaneously for I think like 7 months after my injury.
Nice. Yeah, that's becoming a big thing. I'm going to start dabbling with that, and I'm getting the stem cell. It's a drip. It's not like a local injection. I think they just it's like an IV style. But I think what you did is obviously the move, like to, if you really want to go at it hard, but at least this is a kind of an in between that hopefully will still help. And I've heard guys have really good results with the peptides, particularly if like it's an injury that like, tennis elbow or something, and you pump it hard for 3 or 4 months, it'll get that inflammation to go down. And that's not an end all be all, but that's, I mean, you said you didn't want to overhype it, but I feel like you kind of did a little bit with the brand new shoulders. That sounds pretty freaking compelling. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I'll just follow that up with like, my shoulders I didn't have a huge torn labrum or something like that. I had like significant wear and tear, but not a specific injury.
Okay.
Had I had like a gnarly torn labrum or something, I don't think I wouldn't say that it felt like I had brand new shoulders. It was more like wear and tear and a lot of inflammation in my shoulders, where like overuse would make them sore. And now I like say like just in the weight room, I can feel like I can grab any weights, like, and it's not a concern. Like it's not putting my shoulders at risk, which is like I've never felt like that ever in my life. And then like even I can surf basically all day and my shoulders never get sore anymore. Which is great. And even like I can shoot like my bow as much as I possibly want, and it doesn't make my shoulders sore. So it's good.
Hell yeah. Well, Shane, we really appreciate you coming on, man. And obviously congrats on all the successes in your career and what you're doing now. And, you know, I think, you know, the hidden success in this is the wetsuit that you developed, man. The fact that, would you say 15 years, there has not been a single guy pass away that has worn the suit. Like I think that's your biggest accomplishment, man. So, you know, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on, and, you know, obviously a legend and pioneer in the sport, and not one that we're the most familiar with, but absolutely can respect people that are as instrumental to their industry and sport as you are. So, yeah, man, we really appreciate you coming on.
Really appreciate you guys. Nice to meet you, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, and we'll hit you up about maybe an elk hunt with Aaron if that's something you'd want to do. Obviously, no obligations, but he can get anywhere, and he's just a fun guy to be around. He's the best in the business, man. So we'll hit you up offline if y'all end up wanting to do that. Great, and if you need some gear for that, hit us up as well.
Sounds good, man. Thanks so much.
All right, brother.
See you, Shane.